Joan's story is remarkable for so many reasons. She was a teenage farm girl who saved France, and she did that by embarking on the most absurd journey that you could ever imagine for a teenage farm girl.
Yeah.
You would almost not believe her story because it is so absurd, so ridiculous, if we didn't have her trials and the testimony, her testimony, the testimony of the witnesses.
She was one of the greatest military strategists of all time, and yet she was illiterate and never read a book on strategy. She shows up on the battlefield and she dominates. Do we have what it takes to be martyrs today?
I think we do if we do our job as parents and if we do our job in the church. We need to fill our imaginations with good stories, and I think that the stories of the saints are one of our best weapons as parents to prepare our children to encounter a world where there is spiritual warfare and to really give them the habits of mind and courage that they need to be faithful.
Kimberly Begg, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so it worked out perfect because you were at our local Catholic college, Belmont Abbey. You got a son there, a freshman. So tell us what you were doing there.
I spoke to the Honors College last night about Catholic womanhood.
Awesome. All right. So what was it like?
It was fantastic. I am so impressed with Belmont Abbey. I've had the opportunity to see the college pretty up close since my son is there. But over the last 2 years, we have had a group of young women attend some of our events at the Clare Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women, where I serve as president. Mm-hmm. And I've just been very impressed by the quality of young people coming out of that program.
Yeah, the Honors College is doing fantastic. I've had a couple kids go through it, and they're producing some, fantastic students, young professionals. So it's great. It's a real beacon of light for Belmont Abbey. So you mentioned Clare Booth Luce Center. So tell us a little bit about that, and then try to kind of use that for your whole bio, your whole story, and how you ended up writing Unbreakable. And we're going to spend, by the way, for my viewers to hear, we're going to spend most of our time talking about a couple different saints. One of them is Joan of Arc, and I got stories on that because her prominence in my life is increasing daily. I'm getting the clue from God that He wants me to pay attention to this lady, and it's kind of like I've resisted it for a while. I don't know why, but here I go. But I'll get to that. So, how has your professional work? You got 5 kids. You're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I'm a recovering lawyer. I don't know if you're still practicing really, but how all of that, your whole life, kind of culminated in doing this work, because it's a unique book. It's great. It talks about these particular saints and the saints that inspired them, which is a fun thread to kind of always look at. And these saints here, they have a connection. They all stood up to the state in a certain way, with incredible courage. And the 3 of the 4, at least, were very young. So all of that, talk to me about how your life kind of resulted in this project.
Yeah, boy, I don't really know where to start. The best place to start might be 2018. I found myself in a job that I loved. I was working for a conservative nonprofit organization. I was general counsel and vice president.
So you are like a real lawyer, not like you're a real lawyer, general counsel somewhere. Okay, good.
And really, really enjoying the work. But at that point, my husband and I had 5 children, and I was doing a lot of travel. And I was spending a lot of time away from my children. And Conor, I know you have a big family, and you know what it takes to parent them well. And it takes more than just loving thoughts. It takes presence. Mm-hmm. And I found myself looking at them and realizing that they were not thriving the way that I believed that God needed me to help them thrive as young Catholics. And so I prayed at the time to Our Lady of Lourdes, and I asked for the courage to do what my family needed me to do. I I have been absolutely blown away by the way that that prayer has been answered over the years. I had to use courage to leave a job that I loved, but the opportunities that have opened up since then, in a way that still allowed me to live my faith out in the world and do very interesting work in the world while serving my family, has absolutely blown me away. So I found myself connected to a lot of really good people doing a lot of good and really interesting work. And I ended up giving a presentation to Young America's Foundation to an audience of Catholic high school students. Actually, it was high school students at Catholic schools and college students at Catholic schools on Blessed Jerzy Popiełuszko, who is one of the saints in the book.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about him. We're going to get to him. I mean, it's a pretty awesome story. If you like John Paul II, then you kind of have to love this guy. But seeing his connection with these like other saints, like history repeats itself. I mean, these saints kind of have the same story at different times underneath different oppressive regimes. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
So I gave this presentation, and in doing my research, I was floored to find out that Father Jerzy, Blessed Jerzy Popiełuszko, that his favorite saint from the time he was a kid was Maximilian Kolbe. And when I started to look at the parallels in their life, I gave this presentation, and Dr. Paul Kengor from Grove City also spoke at this program. And I asked him afterwards if he would mind taking a look at the presentation and if he would tell me if he thought this would make a good book. And so Paul watched the presentation and said, actually, that's really interesting. What did you have in mind? And I told him that I think that what young people need today more than ever is moral courage. And I wanted to take a look at some of the church's most courageous saints and the saints who inspire them. So Paul and I talked about it a little bit and ended up giving a proposal to Tan, and I was blown away and thrilled and so excited when Tan accepted the proposal. But from there, lots of different opportunities opened up, including the opportunity to join the staff of the Clare Boothe Luce Center for Conservative Women as president. And this has given me this amazing opportunity to speak to young women across the country and to mentor them and to help them live courageously in their lives, to seek truth and to tell truth and to help spread goodness and truth and beauty in the world.
The question that I had after going through your book was, and I think a lot of the viewers maybe have wondered this, do the people today have what it takes to be martyrs like these guys were and the gals were? I mean, when we look at Saint José Luis Sanchez del Rio, Viva Cristo Rey, people know that. This guy was brutalized. He's a 14-year-old kid, and I want to talk more about him later. We'll tell a story, but you're meeting a lot of young people. You're doing this kind of work. You study the saints. Do we have what it takes to be martyrs today?
I think we do if we do our job as parents and if we do our job in the church. So let's take Saint Jose. He didn't just all of a sudden confront an opportunity to be a martyr. His whole life, now it was a young life, he was 14 years old when this happened, but his whole life had been centered on Jesus. He actually considered Jesus to be his best friend. And he had opportunities under this very oppressive government. President Calles of Mexico had outlawed Catholicism. Yeah. And so he had opportunities, even as a child, to practice courage and to develop habits of courage as a young person, which gave him the strength that he needed at that final moment not to denounce Christ. And in fact, he was tortured and harassed and interrogated for, I think it was maybe 5 days straight, and was pressured over and over again, say death to Christ, renounce your faith. And he refused up until the very end. But that didn't just happen all of a sudden. So even in his very short 14 years, he had opportunities to look at the younger kids in his neighborhood and say, they deserve the same opportunity I had to know Jesus, to consider Jesus as my best friend. They need to know Jesus the way that I do. And so he catechized them. So he taught them the faith. He would actually bring them to churches to sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And he taught the kids in his neighborhood to have the same love for the faith that he did, even though that was outlawed. So he was a criminal when he was performing these acts. And he knew that what he was doing was against the law, and he did it anyway. And by the way, 2 of those little boys that he taught ended up becoming priests and forming orders themselves.
All right, I'm going to ask you a hard question, and if you don't like it, we'll just edit it out. I've thought this myself, and I've kind of wanted to write this book. If God appeared to you and said, one of your kids is going to have to be a martyr at some point in their life, they're going to have to suffer and die, physically, red martyr, and you knew which kid it was, how would you raise that kid to prepare for that?
Books. Lots of stories of the saints. We need to fill our imaginations with good stories that will prepare us for all of the challenges. And by the way, my answer for that question is the same answer for any of the challenges that our kids are going to face, because we are tested in different ways, and we are tested to put ourselves out there and be humiliated for Christ, and to do lots of hard things, to make sacrifices in the world, and to suffer in lots of normal ways that might not seem big and important, but even those normal small ways that we suffer and sacrifice for Christ are important. So I would do it by creating a Catholic culture in the home. And I think that the stories of the saints are one of our best weapons as parents to prepare our children to encounter a world where there is spiritual warfare everywhere, and to really give them the habits of mind and the habits of temperament and courage that they need to be faithful in all of their moments.
Yeah, when I think about, just for myself, like, could I be a martyr? It's like, wait a minute, I can't even get through Lent. It's like I have a hard time giving up peanut butter for 40 days. I mean, how am I gonna be a martyr, And at the same time, like, yeah, that's a lot of sinful, life that I have. But at the same time, I know that God does not give the grace until the exact moment you need it. He's not just going to give you the grace to be a martyr until he needs you to be a martyr. So that's kind of my holdout of hope, is like, okay, if the time came for me or my kids, is like, the grace will come the moment, if you've conditioned yourself throughout your life to be accepting of the grace. But from a practical standpoint, I love that. Stories of the saints. And that's why TAN publishes like so much stuff about the saints. I mean, they're great stories. They're inspirational. And personally, it's kind of like, I tend to be more attracted to saints that no one kind of knows about. Like, I'm on this huge kick on Bernard of Clairvaux, and because no one kind of knows about this guy, and he was tremendous at one point in the church, and everyone's forgotten about him. So it's surprising that like the publisher of TAN like doesn't know much about Padre Pio. I publish a bunch of books by him, but I've always kind of ignored him because he's everywhere, And Teresa of Lisieux, I had to really force myself to get into that book, and I did, and she's amazing. But when everyone's talking about certain saints, I kind of look, maybe it's just my contrarian nature. So some of the Saint José Luis Sanchez, I didn't know anything about him. I don't hear a lot of people talking about him, so I was fascinated with that. But I want to kind of segue that into Joan of Arc. She's been appearing to me. No, that sounds like no, not like appearing, but she's sort of been appearing in a lot of ways in my life. Okay, so on the way here, I was counting it. Like, my dad gave me this Easton Press beautiful deluxe edition of Mark Twain's biography on her. Okay, Mark Twain loved this lady he loved her. Not a Catholic, but he was fascinated with her. And then what was the other one? Oh, and then I go to France recently, and I see the actual place of her martyrdom. We have a picture of that, the actual crucifix where, it's like a shrine, if you're going to pull it up here in a second, where she was martyred. And they had her like walk through from the cathedral all the way through town to the place where they burned her. And my family and I were just there recently. She's in every stained glass window, all through France. And then people keep sending me these links to a recent video production that was made on her life. I forget who did it, but I think Fox Nation, whatever that's called, Martin Scorsese. What's it called? What's the guy's name, Kevin? Martin.
Saints.
Yeah, The Saints. It's called The Series of Saints. I think there's one on Joan of Arc there. And then this book, and so I'm saying, like, okay, I have to get to know this lady. And there's been some kind of resistance throughout my life. I don't really know what it is, but I never found it a very intriguing story. And yet now I'm kind of obsessed with her. And your book helped with this a lot. So let's go to Joan of Arc. How did she influence you? Why'd she go in here? And then start telling us her story, because it's an amazing story. And I'm sorry, one more footnote here. There was something in the book that made me realize this, and this will capture a lot of guys' attention perhaps that maybe weren't particularly interested in her. She was one of the greatest military strategists of all time. And yet she was illiterate and never read a book on strategy. She didn't go to the West Point to like study strategy, which people even did back then. They had education. They had apprenticeships. They would learn strategy. And yet she shows up on the battlefield and she dominates. So a divine inspiration, okay, infused knowledge by God, made her one of the greatest military strategists of all time. That captures my attention. That's pretty amazing. And so she keeps getting more and more amazing to me. Tell us about Joan of Arc.
Okay. Well, first of all, I knew that Joan needed to be in this book. Talking about moral courage, I'll get into her story in just a minute, but she was a teenage farm girl who saved France.
Yeah.
And she did that by embarking on the most absurd journey that you could ever imagine for a teenage farm girl.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah.
So I knew that she needed to be in the book. But I'll tell you, I was terrified of Joan. I was absolutely terrified by her story. So I'm not that surprised to hear that you have been avoiding her story. I was terrified because it seemed too big to write about. And so I wrote about her last. So her story is the first that appears in the book, but it was the last one that I wrote because I was pushing it off as far as possible. And what's interesting is when I wrote the chapter, I didn't actually realize that it was going to be the first chapter until I got to the section on the first saint who inspired her and interceded for her, Saint Michael the Archangel, because he, of course, was the angel who led God's army to defeat Lucifer and the bad angels. So he presided over the very first battle between good and evil. And I realized as soon as I was thinking that through, that her story needed to be the first in the book. Because not only did she exemplify the kind of courage that we all need in our lives, but her story encompasses that very first encounter, that very first battle between good and evil.
Hey guys, real quick, we noticed 80% of you that watch the episodes are not subscribed. So please do me the favor and subscribe and hit the bell for notification. That helps you get the content, but it also helps this amazing stuff get spread to other people just like you. Thanks for your help. Now let's dive back in.
Joan's story is remarkable for so many reasons. One thing that I find fascinating is we know more about Joan than we do about any human being who has ever lived up until her time.
Wow. I wonder why.
Well, because of her trials.
Mm.
So you would almost not believe her story because it is so absurd, so ridiculous, if we didn't have her trials and the testimony, her testimony, the testimony of the witnesses. So we have townspeople who talked about what she was like as a child. We have her priests saying that she was the most holy young woman that he knew. We have the testimony of the soldiers she fought side by side with, her parents. We have testimony from dozens and dozens of people who knew her very, very well. And then her own answers to all of the questions during her trials.
So she starts off as a young farm girl. She helps, mom and dad with the animals and the kids and the cooking and cleaning, just everything. She does all this. How does this start to where she gets some kind of apparition or something that says you have to go do this ridiculous thing? What's that story?
Well, she was a good girl. She was very holy. She knew her prayers. So she was already in a good place, having been raised in a very devout Catholic family. She was visited by Saint Michael, the archangel.
And he saw her? She saw him?
Oh, well,
it was like was it a vision?
Some of this is a little bit unclear.
Right.
And I read over the transcripts many times. Some of it is a little bit unclear, even when she's talking about the way that she received this information. Yeah. But it was made clear to her that it was Saint Michael who was appearing to her. And he first appeared to her when she was 14 years old. And for the next 2 years, prepared her and told her many of the things that her own parents were telling her. To pray, to be very reverent, to be very holy, to go to Mass. And so she obeyed all of these instructions. And then over time, he revealed to her what she was called to do out in the world. And so 2 years later, when she was 16 years old, I'll use the word again, absurd. She made the absurd journey to go see the captain of a royal fortress and ask him to give her an escort to go see the Dauphin, the rightful king of France, and ask that he give her permission to lead a French army.
It's so ridiculous. Can you imagine? I'm sorry, Joan, but this is nuts. Keep going.
Well, and I believe there's a line in the book that says something like it's almost as impossible that she was successful that she even embarked on the journey in the first place.
Yeah.
So she ended up convincing a family member, I think it was her mom's cousin's husband, something like that, a family member to escort her to the captain of this fortress. And then she had to go back a few times because he laughed in her face. But she persevered. And, with the encouragement by St. Michael, she persevered. And he eventually granted her this escort. Now, he didn't do it without testing her. So you remember from the book, there are many people, before she even gets on the battlefield, she had to go through so many different tests. And I think one of the tests that he put her through was having her go see a friend of his who, to remember these details, right? This is a great story, though. He wanted her to go see a friend of his who was very ill. So he sends Joan off to go see this friend. Mm-hmm. And of course, he wants to be cured. Like, okay, you think that you have this special relationship here with God. You think you're being called to something as absurd as leading a French army. Use that special relationship with God to cure me of my illness. And she said, I cannot do that. But you need to get your life in order. You need to get rid of your mistress.
Get rid of your mistress. Yeah.
He apparently was impressed enough
right.
that she clearly had some kind of divine revelation here about the real help that he needed was spiritual. It was not physical. Mm-hmm. And he was impressed enough. And so he advised his friend to take her seriously.
Yeah. This is like my 15-year-old daughter coming to me and saying, hey, Dad, we need to go see the governor of North Carolina so that he'll take me to President Trump so that Trump will let me lead his army to do something. I mean, I would take my daughter to the doctor. It's like, what's wrong with this kid? All right, so she evangelizes to this guy. It invokes a conversion of heart in a way. I hope he gets rid of the mistress. And then he's like, okay, so I take this young girl serious. So he then takes her to the King of England?
So then she goes back to the captain, and he gives her a few escorts. And then they have a very, very long journey. And it was a very dangerous journey. So she embarks on this journey, and they are protected on their way. And what's interesting about the journey is several members of this group who vowed to protect her did not have the best of intentions. So they told the captain, yes, we'll protect her on this journey. So we'll make sure that she gets to the Dauphin, the rightful king. But some of them had intentions to violate her chastity. But they were so impressed with Joan on the way, and her holiness rubbed off on them. And they became, by the end of their journey, to really believe in her and want to protect her. So they make it there safely, even though there was all the danger on the way. And she is presented in the room where the rightful king is. And she looks.
When you say rightful king, sorry, so was the kingdom split, and was there an argument about who the right king was at the time?
So it's probably good that you're asking that question now. So the whole reason that the 100 Years' War was happening, and this was a war between England and France, is because there was a dispute over the rightful heir, who was supposed to rule France. And the reason this was as problematic as it was, breaking out into war, is because the one side, the heir would have been French. The other side, the heir would have been the English king, which meant that England then would have had control over not just England, but France.
What year are we talking about?
This is the 15th century.
15th century, yeah. Okay. So is it like, I don't even know if this is right. I'm getting off track maybe, but William the Conqueror, right? He leaves France and goes into England. And so I know that like those two royalty chains were very much connected. And so I guess like their inner, blood relationship was probably very complicated for hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't know how that manifested itself here in the 15th century, but I guess there was a power play between England and France the whole time.
Yes. And then, so the one line, and then what happened is the judge ruled against the English king and ruled for France, and thus the 100 Years' War.
Right. Okay.
And so
pick it back up. Sorry.
So there's the Dauphin, the rightful king in France, Charles VII, and Joan goes to be received by him, and he tries to trick her. This is another test, and he's dressed down in very casual clothes, and yet all the people in the room, and she makes a beeline right for him. And the two of them go off, and they have a conversation, and he, again, just like the man who had the mistress, she says some things to him, revealing some of his secret thoughts and fears and anxieties, and he believes. So the two of them actually become fast friends. And he says, I believe you. I trust that this is God's will. I trust that you can help France. But then he insists on putting her through a few tests too. So he has different priests and I think some different bishops asking her various questions. And she's patient initially. And then over time, she starts saying, look, God wants me to do this now. And we all need to follow God's will. And so eventually he does give her an army to lead. So she ends up going to the camp. And this is one of the favorite parts of the story to me. She decides that she is going to be doing God's will. She needed to make sure that the army was fighting as Christians. Yeah. And so she instructed all of the soldiers not to use any foul language. She kicked all the prostitutes out of camp. she made the soldiers go to confession. And she made prayer an important part of camp life.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful stuff. I mean,
But that's a good lesson for all of it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here laughing because it's like, man, no cussing on a battlefield. It's like, I understand. Get rid of the prostitutes. Okay, I got that. But I mean, people are trying to kill me. I'm going to cuss, But no, she was holding them to such a high standard.
Yes.
It's kind of amazing. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine the typical soldier saying, "We're taking orders from this 17-year-old girl? This is crazy. But I guess she inspired and impressed the king enough she was given an army, By the way, have you seen the TV show House of David?
No.
Okay, it's really good. It's about King David, right? But one of the plot lines is that after he cuts off Goliath's head, he's super famous among the people, of course. So King Saul, who's not a good guy, to kind of impress the crowds, he gives David control of 1,000 men, and he's just like a teenager. And it's a lot of the storyline is these soldiers saying, "We're not going to follow David," but they kind of have to because King Saul is making them. So it's the story of like how he ends up earning all of their respect over time. So it's kind of similar. I mean, I'm thinking about this young person getting control of an army, So, all right, so she's given this army, she cleans up their act, she turns this battle into more of a spiritual endeavor. It's got to be hard for those soldiers to hear. Then what?
Well, they end up going into Orleans, and at this point, they were days, maybe hours from defeat. So the French army in the city had all but surrendered. Joan comes in with her army, and you mentioned that she was this expert military strategist. There are a number of moments where she just wakes up abruptly at a certain moment and says, now is when we fight. And there are a number of brilliant maneuvers that don't make any sense unless to realize that this was divinely inspired. Now, I just realized we got to the point of the story without mentioning the other two saints who had come to Joan.
Yeah.
At what point should we jump into that?
Yeah, go on. Just explain it. That's all right. Just go back.
Okay. So there were 3 different saints who were visiting and communicating with Joan.
Right.
The other 2 are actually very similar, and you'll see why it was so important that they were interceding for and inspiring Joan. They were both teenage martyrs. And they were both martyred during the Diocletian persecutions in the 4th century. One of them was St. Margaret of Antioch. The other was St. Catherine of Alexandria. St. Margaret of Antioch was the daughter of a pagan priest. And when he discovered that she had become a Christian, he kicked her out of the house, and she became a shepherdess and attracted the attention of a Roman. And when she rejected him, he vowed to punish her and ended up pushing...
We got a picture of her somewhere, please. Sorry, keep going.
Imprisoning her. And as this story has been passed down through the ages, while she was in prison, Satan appeared to her in the form of a dragon.
There it is.
Yeah, you can see she's usually depicted there with a dragon. But the dragon swallowed her whole, but she was holding a cross and used the cross against his throat to escape. She was back in the hands of the authorities, and they were going to put her to death. And I think they tried to kill her with both fire and drowning, and neither of those worked, and so they ended up just beheading her. But you'll see in Joan's story that cross coming into play a little bit later. So the other was St. Catherine.
Well, hang on. Before you go to other, did St. Margaret appear to Joan?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if that was like while she was still on the farm, or was she like in the military camp?
Various times. Okay. And again, the record, because all of this is coming from the testimony from her trials, and it's not entirely clear. All three of them definitely appeared to her before she left home.
I see. Okay.
And then various times, but it's not really clear what those various times
So
were.
Joan is a major visionary. I mean, you're getting some heavy hitters appearing to her, and an archangel's pretty awesome, but she's getting two female young martyrs.
Two teenagers.
Two teenagers, yes. Yeah, teenage martyrs who were under an oppressive regime in the Diocletian period. So there's a divine purpose for this. Like, I guess maybe God wanted to inspire her with these stories of these young female teenage martyrs because she was on her way. Yeah. All right. So yeah, Saint Catherine of Alexandria.
So St. Catherine similarly was a teenager, although she was born to nobility, and she received an excellent education. So she was very well educated in philosophy, and she was not in danger herself, but she was very upset over the persecution of Christians. And so she very courageously went to the emperor and pleaded the case for her fellow Christians to have him stop persecuting them. And he found her very beautiful, and she rejected his advances. And so he decided that he wanted to impress her by kind of knocking the Christianity out of her. So he wanted to argue against Christianity and have her leave the faith. And so he had her debate 50 philosophers. And of course, she was so persuasive that she ended up converting. So the story says all 50 philosophers. So the emperor put all of them to death, and then these are great stories that are passed
Alexandria was like the philosophy headquarters of the universe. Okay, so this is where Origin was. It was a kind of a Greek, headquarters. Early Christianity made its way there. I think Saint Mark made his way there. And that's where like philosophy really started to boom. And so that's how they would have 50 philosophers sitting around. And this Christian catechesis really began there with Origen and others. So yeah, it was like the headquarter of early Christian thought, how like, Israel and Greece kind of comes together. That's how we have this influence of Christian philosophy on Catholic doctrine. It was right there. So it makes sense to me that she was well educated. She studied philosophy. This is what, 500, something like that, and this is pretty early.
This was 4th century.
Okay, so this is 300, right? So really darn early, and so it makes sense that the king is saying, okay, we're gonna put 50 philosophers to argue against her. But then it stinks that he killed them all. Yeah. Okay, yeah, keep going.
So, but she was very persuasive. And so there was an audience, soldiers in the audience, and the emperor's wife was also in the audience, and they all wanted to convert. So, had all them killed too.
Wow.
And then it was decided that it was time for her to be put to death. And so one of the worst tortures at the time was something called a breaking wheel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So somehow limbs were woven into the wheel, and then I think hammers, and it's supposed to be very, very painful. But as the story goes, Catherine touched the wheel.
They just break all the limbs. They just break all the limbs to where you're just, all your limbs are just hanging, by tendons, I guess, at that point. So it's awful.
So she touches the breaking wheel, and it shatters. And then I think she's beheaded too.
Mm-hmm. Which is an easier way to go than the wheel. So God had a little bit of mercy on her there, right? Joan wasn't so lucky, to just be beheaded. So you have Michael the Archangel, Margaret of Antioch, Catherine of Alexandria, all appearing to Joan before she's going into these battles. Maybe later, who knows? But so these saints have inspired her. God's giving her this incredible grace to see this. She's going and winning battles. And we were at the Battle of Orleans.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. And so she succeeds in driving miraculously. They were right on the brink of absolute surrender, right on the brink of defeat, end up driving the English out of Orleans. A lot happens after that. There are a lot of different battles. But then the rightful king ends up being coronated, which is wonderful. This was all a part of what Joan considered to be her, that she was being called to do.
Do you think he gave her credit for this?
Well, no, and that's the problem.
Okay.
So he, at some point, becomes rather comfortable. People are whispering in his ear, saying that she wanted to embrace political power.
Oh, gosh.
And so he perhaps becomes a little paranoid, ends up looking the other way when the very humiliated, not just the English, but those French who were on the English side, they're referred to as the Burgundians. They felt very humiliated because they had been defeated by a girl. Mm-hmm. And so her French countrymen end up handing her over to the English. And there is a bishop there, Bishop Cauchon, who had very big political plans. So he was counting on the English winning the 100 Years' War, and he had very strong relationships within the church in England, and he was going to rise in the church hierarchy. And Joan destroyed all of his plans. And so he was intent on revenge. And so he ends up organizing a sham trial for her. The whole goal of the trial was to convict her and then hand her over to secular authorities to be executed, which is exactly what happened. But along the way, she is questioned, and we referenced the transcripts earlier. That's why we have all these transcripts, and was given lots of trick questions, and her answers were 100% theologically sound. I mean, this is where St. Catherine of Antioch comes in here, because you see her debating 50 philosophers and being so persuasive that she converts them and all of the onlookers. Here, Joan was answering the questions absolutely expertly. So I'll give you the best known example. She was asked if she was in a state of grace. And she says, if I am, I pray that I continue to be in a state of grace. And if I'm not, I pray that God will put me in a state of grace. Because she knew that either a yes or a no to that question was going to get her into trouble.
Trick questions.
Yes, lots of trick questions, but she answers all of the questions beautifully, and she knows which questions there is no answer to. So there are a few times where she's asked questions and she basically says, pass. That's not a question that I can answer. And interestingly, she's also pressed on what God has revealed to her. And she says, I am not allowed to share that.
Oh.
So she very well, there might be more to her story of what she knew, of what St. Michael and St. Catherine and St. Margaret revealed to her, but she might have known more than we know.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. All right. So did they torture her before killing her?
No.
Okay.
No, they tricked her. They made her sign a confession. She was illiterate, as you mentioned, which she could not read, and she was told it said something it didn't say. And then she was burned at the stake. And this is an amazing story. There were Dominican priests who were there helping her. One of them, she asked for a cross, and she held the cross close to her, and then she also wanted a cross that she could gaze at during being burned at the stake. And they set the fire. It's terrifying. She's praying. The last word she speaks is Jesus. The executioner has all this hatred in his heart. He enthusiastically, pours all of the whatever executioners pour on fire. Okay. And he's told to go retrieve the ash and the body. And so he's pouring more of what he needs to turn her body into ash. and he finds that her heart will not burn. And so her heart remains intact, full of blood, while the rest of her body is in ash.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. And I stood at her site of martyrdom just like 2 weeks ago, less than that, probably 10 days ago. And I thought I sent you a picture, Nicholas, of that, but no, there's a big cross somewhere. That's like the area, but there's a big cross somewhere that you could find probably on Google. But there's not a lot to see there. It's just like a big kind of ugly cross, not even a crucifix, and with some rocks and stuff around it. But what's kind of interesting is you can walk from there back up to, there's like a path on the road where it's like brick within the concrete. So it's like a little path that they've designed that shows the route that she walked from, I guess, the cathedral where her trial was down to, that's it right there. Yeah. So it's just kind of an ugly cross, but you can follow this path, and this is like a museum for her or something. I think it's a chapel/museum, and we couldn't get in. It was closed when we were there. But you can walk the path. It's almost like a Calvary path because she knew what she was going to, and so you're able to kind of walk that, which is nice. So it was spiritually enriching to be there because you're like, okay, this girl was burned to death, and that's got to be the absolute worst way to go, is burning. As I hear, that's like the most painful thing ever. So, okay, so she dies, but she's redeemed in a way, right? So kind of how's the story finish out with Joan?
Well, she was not canonized very soon. So even though in France she was recognized as this national hero for centuries, it took until I think it was the early 1900s to have her
it's like 400 years
canonized.
Yeah.
Declared finally a saint. And the reason is it was embarrassing. She was persecuted by the church. She was called a heretic. She wasn't a heretic. She was one of the most courageous saints of all time.
Yeah, so what was she killed for? Like, what was the faux reason? I mean, like cross-dresser, like didn't they throw up stuff like that? I mean, like what was she convicted of?
Well, ultimately the conviction was her refusal to give up the men's clothing. And it was all a big trick.
What was her rationale for that? I mean, just like you can't ride a horse in a dress. I mean, is that kind of the basic thing?
So there was a twisting of scripture was the rationale for it. But even to get to that point, there were so many articles that were part of the accusations against her, including that she participated in witchcraft and that she was bloodthirsty and that she hated her enemies on the battlefield, and so a whole ridiculous list of accusations. And then at the very end, she had basically had to agree to never wear men's clothing again, which fine. She happily agreed to that, and she thought, okay, well, maybe this is over. And then she had to go to the bathroom, and when she did, she came back, and the clothes had been taken from her, the girls' clothes. Okay. And so at that moment, of course, the bishop just happened to pay her a visit.
Oh gosh.
Right. It was all pretty silly.
Yeah.
I say silly, but horrible.
No, right, right.
And so then she was caught, and all she had to do was just not wear the men's clothing again, and here you go. But
they give her no option.
He was looking for even the tiniest little thing to convict her of. But that was the goal. The goal was always to convict her, and so that's what they did.
Did she have to hide the fact that she was a woman on the battlefield? Like when she went and took over these troops, like did they know she was a girl, or did
they knew? Okay. They knew.
Right.
Because
so she wasn't like hiding it. See, I think that's this part of the story that the modern world tells is like.
No, she wasn't hiding it.
That she was like a cross-dresser and she was fooling everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the case. Like she wasn't hiding.
No, in fact, there was an old story that said France would be saved by a maid, and so the French realized that this was a fulfillment of that prophecy.
That might have made made it easier.
Yes.
Maybe the king was sitting there saying, oh, hey, this is the prophecy. Wow. Okay. That's an important part, you know. So God somehow, I wonder where that came from. I wonder where that legend came from, where that prophecy. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But that would make him a little easier saying, okay, we've been believing this for a long time and here she is. So, but I'm glad to hear that she wasn't hiding the fact that she was a woman, you know, because I think that's used by the left. You must have seen the left use her in some kind of twisted feminist kind of thing. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and transgender.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
She never thought she was a boy.
Right.
She was a girl.
Yeah.
She was a French girl who never wanted to be on the battlefield. In fact, we have direct quotes from her saying, I really wanted to be back home with my parents. She missed her parents.
Yeah.
She didn't want to be this legend in the church. She didn't want to ride horses. She didn't want to be a soldier.
Yeah.
She wanted to be home on her farm. But she was doing God's will. And that's the point of the story.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yes.
All right. Before we move on to Saint José Luis Sánchez del Río, which is a mouthful, final thoughts on Joan. Like, what do you want your kids to know about this? You know, you go around and talk a lot at college campuses. You probably talk about her. Final thoughts on her.
Yeah. I talk about...
Oh, that's a good image.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. See how she's gazing at the cross there?
Yes, that's what you were saying. There's the Dominican right there.
Yep. Final thought is that I believe we all have Joan of Arc moments that we have to recognize and embrace.
That's good.
That might seem a little absurd. So we get very comfortable in our lives. But I do think that there are opportunities to cooperate with God's grace that we're probably all missing.
I'm like thinking patron saint of the absurd. And I like that. I really like that. Because God asks you to do crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. And you're like, this is ridiculous. This makes no human sense at all.
And I don't think we have the imaginations to see the absurd plans that God has for us and how beautiful they are.
I mean, one absurd plan he had is for Conor and Ashley to have 17 children. It's ridiculous. You gotta be kidding me. What? You know? And here, I mean, I'm just thinking of my own life, right?
Sure.
In my own life, you can look back and say, there's some ridiculous stuff. I mean, running tan? What? How was a second-rate lawyer? How did I end up doing this? I mean, you know, so I can look at my own life, as everyone can, if you live long enough and you start looking back and you're saying, this doesn't make any sense at all how I ended up here. It's not absurd that my wife could handle 17 children. She's got it. But it's absurd she'd stay with me for all these years. That's an absurdity. But I can look and say, okay, God clearly is the master weaver here. Like, he is weaving all of this stuff together, which doesn't make a lot of sense from a human standpoint. So I've gone from kind of ignoring Joan of Arc to I'm going to have a serious devotion to her. I mean, and your book had a lot to do with that. So thank you for that. For 17 years, I've been making ebooks and audiobooks of this amazing tan library. And it's always been frustrating to me that I had to go to Kindle or Audible or wherever to get my own books from Tan. But now finally we have the Tan digital app. We have 900 plus ebooks and 300 plus audiobooks. These amazing writings of the saints, these spiritual classics, the most important books ever composed. The Tan digital app is the perfect place to where you can listen to this amazing stuff in the car or when you're on the treadmill or whatever you're doing. I'm personally using this. I love it. I know you will too. Go to Google Play or the App Store to get the Tan digital app. Can we move on to Saint José Luis Sánchez del Río? And all I can say is that I've, Holy Heroes, if you're familiar, like these little audio tapes.
Yes. We love those. And
they're made right near here. They're in Belmont or McAdenville or somewhere. I mean, Cramerton or some little town right around here. But we're friends with the family, and they make these amazing audio tapes. And we used to play them in the car. I said audio tapes, whatever the hell. Yeah. Whatever, MP3s, whatever it is. But you drive around, you're hearing the story of him walking on this death march. and Viva Cristo Rey, and I have that in my memory, and my little kids have, grew up hearing that. So, but that's all I knew about him. I finally, in reading this, I got into his story much more in depth, started looking more things up on him on the internet and everything. And I'm amazed with the guy. I'm amazed with this little boy. And I'm royally pissed off at the people that tortured this kid, I'm sorry, you torture a 14-year-old kid, you cut the skin off the bottom of his feet, you make him walk a long way, you make him dig his own grave, you stab him with bayonets over and over again, you break his jaw with the butt of your gun. There's a special place for you in hell. Sorry. Why don't you tell us about why don't you tell the story? Sorry, I got a little carried away. 14-year-old little boy.
And my favorite part of the end of his life there is that they did all of this in front of his mother.
No.
And you know how his mother responds? She encourages him to keep going.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That is holy parenthood.
Yeah, it is.
That is what we are all called to do. Yeah. We are all called to prepare our children to be martyrs, and to encourage them to always stay true to Christ.
Yeah. All right, go back. He's born. Then what happens? And roughly when are we? And just kind of set the stage.
This is the beginning of the 20th century. Mexico had been a very Catholic country ever since the Spanish had come over and conquered the Aztecs. And Our Lady of Guadalupe had essentially converted the entire country to Catholicism. So because of different political events, there was a lot of poverty in Mexico, a lot of resentment that was used to support some political opportunists who came to power, and one of them was President Calles, who was a Freemason. Very
Freemason. Freemason. It's always there. I'm sorry. You start looking at these crazy stories, all of these horrific rebellions around the world where Catholicism is brutally oppressed. Freemason. Sorry, keep going.
So President Calles comes to power. He hates Catholicism. He actually says, I have a personal hatred for Jesus Christ. Absolutely hates Catholicism. In 1917, he passes the first socialist constitution in the history of the world. And under his leadership, Mexico becomes the first country in the Americas to recognize the Soviet Union.
Wow. I did not know that part. Man, that does not look good for them. Sorry, keep going. Man.
Initially, the Constitution was not enforced, but there was a town called Jalisco where it was. And this is a good time to mention one of the saints who inspired Saint Jose. So in this town of Jalisco, there was a young man named Anacleto Gonzalez Flores. And he did come from a very devout Catholic family, very poor family. But his parents did not have enough money to send him to Catholic school. So he went to the government school and was completely disinterested in his faith. Until when he was 17 or 18 years old, a missionary came to his school, or maybe to the church, and got Anacleto interested in faith for the first time. And
there he is.
He developed a real love for reading, for philosophy, for theology, and he developed a very strong devotion to the Blessed Sacrament. And he was so interested in his faith that he thought maybe seminary was an option for him, and he tried seminary out. And then he decided that what he was being called to do was to be an attorney and an activist out in the world. And so to go back to the story of Jalisco, Anacleto at this time is an older man. He is an attorney. And when this very anti-Catholic constitution starts being enforced to shut the churches down and to strip priests of all of their rights, and even to dictate the number of priests who could exist in the town at that time, and putting in very, very burdensome administrative requirements for the faith to be practiced, Anacleto organizes a boycott. And he gets all of the Catholic families to not purchase items in the town that was a disaster economically for the town. And so this boycott is successful. And so the town has no choice but to stop enforcing this anti-Catholic constitution. So Anacleto, goes on, and through the years, President Calles gets more enthusiastic about enforcing these ideas of his in the Constitution across the board throughout Mexico. And Anacleto becomes very involved in writing literature, pamphlets, speaking out. He becomes a total nuisance to the state. He is captured with friends. He refuses to identify the location of a very faithful bishop who is in hiding. He is tortured very, very badly. He watches his friends get murdered. And the last thing that he says before he dies is Viva Cristo Rey. He becomes a very important figure in the resistance movement. So the story of Saint Jose is most remembered because he was a young Cristero, who was the Cristeros were the farmers who banded together to become the resistance army to protect the Catholics and protect the right and the freedom of religion of the people of Mexico against this very powerful socialist anti-Catholic state. Yeah,
so on that note, I mean, I didn't really know much about the Cristero movement, and we've published books on it, but I've never paid attention. And, looking at it from today's world, like we kind of think like, oh, the Hispanic culture's always been Catholic, and until you go back to like the Aztec time, right? So it's kind of surprising on one level that there was such anti-Catholicism at this time period in Mexico, because you think of Mexico as just so Marian and Guadalupe. But on another level, it's not surprising at all, because there's always these revolutions that happen. And Russia was a great Christian, Eastern Catholic place. France was like the ultimate Catholic place, and then you have the French Revolution, and so on. So, it really shouldn't be surprising. But when you read, and I just did some more research on the whole Cristero War, it's remarkable. Like, so the government passed these laws. This bad president started enforcing what they said priests couldn't wear clerics. So they started canceling masses at different times. And it was like you were just saying, it was just like a lay movement. Like it was just farmers with pitchforks. But it wasn't just like the solidarity movement in Poland where it's, it was like they went to war. They formed little guerrilla bands of, soldiers, and they fought these guys. Like the farmers went to war with their pitchforks. Like it's amazing. It's amazing, kind of a rising of the common people to stand up against an oppressive government. And the catechism, right before here, I was talking with Chris Conor in the office, and it's like paragraph 2243 or whatever, he has it memorized, but it's like armed resistance is justified under certain circumstances. And it's things like you have no other alternative. You tried everything else you can. And the church has always said, no, armed resistance is morally acceptable in certain circumstances, and that's what this was. So we have this young man who was he became like the intellectual powerhouse behind the movement, but he doesn't get any street cred. Like we don't know anything about him. We know the young guy because it's a little bit more of an interesting story, but this guy was, a highly influential person who influenced the young Saint Jose.
He did. And right before Jose enlisted in the Cristero army, he visited Anacleto's grave. And so he traveled to Anacleto's grave, came home, and told his parents that he wanted to be a Cristero. And of course, he was 14, and so he couldn't just run off without their permission. And his mother and father were not thrilled about the idea of handing off their young son to the Cristero army, but they agreed to let him go. And so he went to one camp.
Didn't he say something like, there's never been a better time to die for Christ?
Yes,
or something like that.
Yes.
He's like, this is the perfect time, Mom. I get to be a martyr.
He
Yay!
was on fire for Christ.
Yeah.
Yes. And he saw that the good people in his community were banding together to do something. They weren't going to stand by and be bullied by these anti-Catholic socialists.
Wow. All right, would you let your 14-year-old son go do this?
Sorry. I don't think so.
Mine, no way.
Not at 14.
No, my kid's not going. Sorry.
So he walks to the first camp and they turn him down and they say, sorry, son, you're too young. He goes to the second camp and they say, you're too young to fight, but we can use you here in camp. So he makes coffee and he helps with the food and he delivers water and he is a part of camp life. And an important part of camp life, of course, because the Cristeros are fighting for Catholicism, is Mass. And the rest of the soldiers are amazed by how reverent this little boy is when he receives the Eucharist. I find this part of the story absolutely amazing because this 14-year-old boy wanted to be a part of this army so badly. He was not ashamed of his faith at all. He knelt when the other soldiers were not kneeling, and he allowed himself to be viewed as this very pious, very reverent young man, and he wasn't ashamed. He wasn't humiliated. He wasn't afraid to stand out for his faith in this camp. And it was very touching to the other soldiers. And they gave him the nickname of Tarcisius.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Who I know you're familiar with.
Yeah, you want to tell his story now?
Sure, absolutely.
We got an image for him, too.
Tarcisius was 12 years old. He was a 3rd century martyr in the Valerian persecutions. And this was a time when Christians were gathering in the catacombs and Catholicism was outright banned. Yeah. So Christians had to meet in secret. He also had a very strong devotion to the Blessed Sacrament. And one of the priests asked for a volunteer to take the Blessed Sacrament to prisoners. He volunteered. He said, no one's going to suspect me. I'm a boy. Let me do it. And as the story goes, he was carrying the pouch with the Eucharist in it very close to his heart. He saw some boys who recognized that he was a Christian somehow, and it came over to attack him and tried to rip the bag and the Eucharist out of his hands, but he clung tightly, so tightly that he was beaten and died. And then one of the soldiers, who secretly was a Christian, found him and brought him to the catacombs where, as the story goes, as St. Benedict shared when he was canonized, the pouch was empty. And the way the story is told is that he just united so closely to the Blessed Sacrament in his own suffering and in his love for the sacrament that they became one.
I don't know why I'm going here, but you think about our Protestant brethren who do a lot of good things, but do they think this guy died for a symbol?
Right.
Or he was just totally ignorant, as all those early Christians were ignorant. They were all ignorant, thinking that this was something that it wasn't, and it was just always a symbol, and the early church just got it dead wrong, and he died for nothing. God, it pisses me off.
This is something I've thought about quite a bit because my favorite place in the world is sitting before the Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament. my colleague Catherine is here with me, and we were just having this conversation.
Did you go by the St. Joseph Adoration Chapel at Belmont Abbey?
That's one of my favorite places in the world.
It's awesome.
I love that Adoration Chapel.
I was there yesterday with my 11-year-old, yeah. So.
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you a great story about one of the times recently I was there. I was with my oldest son, Charlie, who is a freshman at Belmont Abbey. And this was before he'd committed, so maybe it was the week he was here for the summer program. And we were sitting there in the Adoration Chapel, and we're praying. And I say to him, Charlie, what's the best prayer? And he says, he's 19. I think he was 18 at the time. Well, I don't think Jesus ever ranked the prayers, And so I paused and I said, well, do you want me to tell you? And he paused and he said kind of begrudgingly, thy will be done. And I thought, I've done something right
that's good.
here.
That's a good answer. Yeah, way to go, Mom. Yeah.
Thy will be done is much easier to live when you spend time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. It's real. And the reason it's so hard for Protestants to understand that is because they've never experienced that reality. They've experienced the symbol. And they can imagine somebody sitting in front of a symbol and I guess convincing themselves that it was more than a symbol. That makes sense to them. But Protestants have never been to that Adoration Chapel and sat there and prayed and experienced the clarity about their path and about their calling in the world. And it's a really hard thing to explain to somebody if they've never experienced it.
And also just experientially, my Protestant friends, I want to say to them, you must think I'm nuts, out of my mind, that I would die for this wafer. Like, give me a little bit more credit than that. I'm not that dumb. I'm not that dumb. I'm not going to die to prevent somebody from burning a Bible. I'm not going to die to prevent somebody from breaking a stained glass window or even to preserve some precious relic. But I'll die for the Eucharist. And I'm not alone. There's like a lot of us. So we're all either really stupid, or we got something that you don't got, By the way, that Adoration Chapel, so this is a little plug for Belmont Abbey, right? So when I go there, which is frequent, that's why I'm so holy. I mean, that's why people wonder why is Conor so holy. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, sorry. All right. So when I go to Belmont Abbey, I try to go there a lot. And I go into the Adoration Chapel. There's like a nice seat over here and a nice seat over here with a kneeler. And then there's like the regular pews. So I want those seats, right? And I go in at like, whatever time. And sometimes there's so many students in there, I can't get a seat. And I'm like, don't you kids have anything else better to do? It's like, get out. You're in my seat, man. Get out. Go to math class. Give me my seat. But anyway, it's sometimes so packed with the students that I can't get a seat. That says something about Belmont Abbey, and there's just very good things going on there.
And it also says something about the power of the Eucharist.
Yeah.
There's a reason those kids keep going back.
Yeah, they keep going back, and taking my seat. Okay. No. All right. So where were we? So St. Tarsius is a great role model for St. Jose.
Yes.
Right?
And so the other soldiers give him the nickname of Tarcisius. A battle comes along, and St. Jose becomes the standard bearer. So he has the bugle, and he's carrying the flag.
That's a great AI colored image of him. He just looks so real, It's awesome.
And General Morphin is very fond of him. And his horse gets shot. And so he finds himself without a horse. Well, Jose has a horse. And so Jose gives up his horse to General Morphin, recognizing that he is more important in this battle as the general than I am as the standard bearer. And he knows he's going to be captured. And he is. And over the course of his captivity, over the next 5 days, his godfather is actually the mayor of the town, and he goes to him and threatens him, but then tries a different tactic of, look, we'll make you an officer in the Federales army, and tries everything, tries to tempt him, and he refuses to denounce his faith. And so he writes his mother and tells her what an honor it is to die for Christ. His aunt sneaks him in communion one last time.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah. Before,
as you mentioned, that his feet are all cut up, and then he's made to walk this very long, and it was in the middle of the night too, because they sort of wanted to do it in secret because they didn't want to upset the whole town. But he walks to his death, and he's beaten, and he's tortured, and eventually he's just shot.
Somebody here this morning before you got here, one of the employees here at TAN, I said, how you doing? What's going on in your life? She's like, well, I got to have surgery on my jaw next week. And I went, I was just reading about a jaw. And it was this Saint José Sánchez del Río, who, as he's being tortured basically on this death march, stabbed with bayonets, had his skin cut off his feet. They hit him so hard with the rifle that it broke his jaw. And he's still saying Viva Cristo Rey through this broken jaw. And then eventually they shoot him and kill him when he's in the grave. But I said to her, maybe you need a little intercession here for somebody who had a broken jaw. Anyway, never considered invoking someone for something like that. But that's what the saints are here to do, So yeah, if you got jaw issues, this is your guy. Yeah. So, all right. So he's killed. I think then the next day his mom recovers his body. Do you know about that?
And it becomes a pilgrimage site. And
like instantly?
Yes.
Yeah.
And people are just very moved by his story and the heroism. How can you not be moved by the heroism of a 14-year-old boy who voluntarily gives his life for Christ? Because he could have gotten out of the situation. All he needed to do was say death to Christ.
And his mother's on along the way. I mean, it's very like the Blessed Mother watching Christ on the way to Calvary. It's just eerily similar. I mean, and the younger you are, in a sense, the more innocent, right? So I mean, this is like the most innocent person on a death march, And you were saying the mother encouraged him to not lose faith. So connect that to moms and dads today.
Something we haven't talked about is the book is written for parents because parents need to learn how to create a Catholic culture in their home where they themselves understand the responsibility. This is something that you've written on so beautifully. To understand the responsibility to care for and shepherd along the children who are entrusted to you, understanding that our children are not ours. We always think of them as our children. Right. They're not our children. They're God's children. They've been entrusted to us. And it is our responsibility to shepherd them and to do everything we can to make sure that they understand that their destination is heaven and that they need to cooperate with God's grace to get there. And this is how José's mom cooperated with God's grace. And this is how José cooperated with God's grace.
How does this connect, like the story of this young guy who's a martyr dealing with fighting in the Cristero, am I saying it right? Cristeros, Cristero movement. Connect that up with our next saint or blessed Jerzy. Am I saying that right? But Jerzy?
Probably Jerzy. I
didn't know anything about this guy. I learned a lot, but what was kind of immediately apparent is that, just the same pattern keeps occurring where you have this totalitarian government oppressing Catholicism. Like that's just what always happens. The moment you have an atheistic type government come in, the first thing they do is go after Catholics. It's just always been the case, and it always will be the case. Fast forward 1,000 years, that's what's going to happen, folks. Okay, so your great-great-great-great-grandkids better get used to it, because this is going to happen for them too. So within this, 100-year difference, you got this is happening in Mexico, and you have martyrs, and then you have this young priest who you'll now talk about dealing with the Soviet Union, and it just rears its ugly head. And we're more familiar with the story of the Solidarity movement and the Soviet Union because, some of us remember it. So I have vague memories as a little kid of Ronald Reagan battling this, and John Paul II, and Mikhail Gorbachev. I mean, I have little kid memories of, of this happening. So I think we have at least I have a very good taste for the evilness of a communist regime and how anti-Catholic it becomes so quickly. And anybody who spent time looking at John Paul II and his life kind of gets it. But there were many other characters who had a very significant role to play in this fight, particularly of Poland, with the Soviet Union. Which was such an amazing place for Catholic culture. John Paul II and Karol Wojtyła came from an amazing background with Maximilian Kolbe, and we'll get to that. But this guy I didn't know anything about, and he's awesome. So that's kind of my segue into him. Tell us about Jerzy.
Okay. Well, Jerzy Popiełuszko was born to a very faithful Catholic family in communist Poland. And so the schools at that point had been taken over by the communist government. They were teaching a Marxist curriculum, and the students were encouraged to not speak about Catholicism, not speak about God, not speak about their faith at all. So at that point, it was not legally outlawed the way that it was legally outlawed in Mexico, but everybody understood that you were creating trouble for yourself if you lived your faith out loud.
Right.
So young Jerzy had a very strong faith. When he was a little kid, he would play mass at home. He was an altar boy, and he would walk a long distance, wake up early to go to mass and to serve mass before going to school. And his mom had a memory once of being called in by the teacher, and she was very surprised because her son was a good student and never gotten in any trouble. But what the teacher said was, you need to tell your son to stop all this Catholic business because it's going to affect his behavior grade. And, here's another example of a strong Catholic mother. Because she said, I know that in Poland, we have freedom of religion. And she said no. And rightfully so, she never pressured her son to keep his faith to himself. So I was saying earlier that Blessed Jerzy was the inspiration for the book because I learned that his favorite saint was Maximilian Kolbe. Yeah. And when I learned that, everything about his heroism made so much sense. So he would go to his grandmother's house as a little kid, and he used to enjoy reading St. Maximilian Kolbe's Knights of the Immaculata newspaper.
I'm a Knight of Immaculata.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, at Steubenville. I haven't done anything with it in a long time, but when I was at Steubenville, we got into that.
Excellent.
We'd get together and have readings. We'd read it and say prayers. It was awesome.
So from the time he was a little boy, that was his favorite saint.
Yeah.
He went to a secondary school that was not state-run. It was a Catholic school. Not really sure how it was allowed, but it was allowed. And it was run by a very faithful priest who only hired faithful Catholics. So he knew that the secret to passing on the faith was to hire teachers who were on fire for Christ, who they themselves were believers. And it was there that Jerzy developed a love, I'm going to talk about philosophy again, a love for philosophy. In fact, his fellow students called him the philosopher because he loved to talk about big ideas that he was learning about in school. And it was there that he first learned learned about and read the writings of Stephen Wyszynski, who became a bishop and who was the head of the local seminary.
Mm-hmm.
But while he was in school, he also read the writings and biographies of Maximilian Kolbe.
Yeah.
So now would be a good time to segue to Maximilian Kolbe's
Sure, yeah,
life.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people know about him, but have you been to Auschwitz?
No.
I have.
Wow.
It's creepy. I mean, it's absolutely incredibly beautiful and creepy at the same time. Like, it's, you know, I've been in his cell block, you know, where he was starved to death. I'm glad they preserved that. But, you know, and there's also this incredible one-man play on the life of Maximilian Kolbe, and Leonardo de Philippis. That's the guy who, and see, I think you can find this online, but anybody needs to learn about Maximilian Kolbe. Like, the one-man play of him is just really fascinating to watch. But there's movies. I think he actually de Philippis made a movie on him too, I think. But amazing guy. Yeah, go ahead. You know, I love the story. Everyone loves the story. But Kolbe, of course, became, there he is, a patron saint of media.
Yes.
I think, right? So,
and,
Kurt, go
and
ahead.
that's the part of the story that most people don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
People are familiar with how he died at Auschwitz, and that's an amazing story. But his whole life was absolutely fascinating.
He's like this entrepreneur. Like, if he was alive today, he'd be like CEO of Coca-Cola or something. I mean, he's amazing. He
was brilliant.
He's good at everything he did.
He was absolutely brilliant. So both he and Stefan Wyszynski were both born in Poland during the 123 partition, which was when Poland had lost its independence and had been controlled by three different powers, and both of them were born in the Russian-controlled.
Okay, so you got Germany and Russia. What's the third?
Austria.
Oh, okay. Man, yeah, and they just got pulverized from all angles.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were both born before the Soviet Union, but in the Russian-controlled. But Russia still had this very intense desire to wipe out all of the culture of the lands that it was occupying.
Yeah.
And so we referred to it as the Russification of Poland. So there were efforts to wipe out the Polish culture. And so both Maximilian Kolbe and Stefan Wyszynski lived in a time where they really had to fight to keep their Polish identity.
Sorry, footnote, like John Paul II, so Karol Wojtyła, Maximilian Kolbe, and Sister Faustina, all born like within a certain time and a place. I mean, it was amazing. Like, three incredible saints just pop up right, basically at the same time in history in the same place. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of an amazing thing. Poland was amazing. I mean, they produced some sorry, keep going.
Well, Poland was amazing, and I'm going to jump around stories too much here, but we always think about Poland and how Catholic it is, right?
Yeah.
So I'm having some problems now holding on to Catholicism. But one of the reasons that Poland has always been so Catholic is Catholicism is a part of the founding of Poland. So when they talk about the founding of Poland, they often refer to it as the baptism of Poland, because that first leader of Poland, his baptism is when they refer to the founding.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
So this is great. This is Cardinal Wyszynski right here. And what he is best known for is celebrating the millennial of Poland. So he was a very strong Catholic and a resistance figure during the time of the communists, very strongly trying to not just wipe out the faith, but control the faith and manipulate it. And time again, it was Cardinal Wyszynski who said no and refused to be manipulated.
Now, he was older than Karol Wojtyła.
Yes.
So was he like a mentor to him, or?
He was somewhat of a spiritual father.
Okay. Yeah. So were they bishops at the same time? I don't know. It's kind of details, but I think I've heard that Carol was very much influenced by this man.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
imagine this guy when he finds out that Carol is made Pope. Can you imagine everything Poland went through? Amazing. And you hear that like his younger brother Bishop, who he was a mentor to in a sense, becomes the Pope. That must have been amazing. So one of
the greatest resistance efforts really of all time came from this man, Cardinal Wyszynski, because realizing that Poland was about to celebrate the millennial of its existence, and realizing how closely tied Poland's founding was to Christianity and Catholicism, he spent his 3-year term of when he was imprisoned for being disobedient to the communist government. He spent that 3 years of imprisonment putting together a plan to celebrate the millennial.
Wow.
And it started with a novena of 9 years of preparation. So during this 9 years, he was able to get the Polish people excited about the celebration of Poland's heritage. And this had the dual purpose of getting the Polish people to think about their love of their country, but also to think about their love of God and their love of faith. And those ideas reinforced each other. So it's going back to Jerzy Popiełuszko. He was very influenced by this man when he was in secondary school and reading from him. Then he decided to enlist in seminary, where Cardinal Wyszynski was the rector.
Oh, really? Oh, he was this rector.
He was, okay. And that's why he went to that seminary. There was a seminary that was closer, but he wanted to be instructed in the faith by this man. And Cardinal Wyszynski ordained Jerzy.
Make sure to follow @Conor Gallagher Show on Instagram and Facebook. It's there where you can engage with the content much deeper, behind the scenes footage, behind the scenes content. It's going to be fascinating. Now back to the episode.
So we'll pick up the story. So, now would be a good time to sort of jump back to Maximilian Kolbe just a little bit.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that Maximilian Kolbe and Cardinal Wyszynski, they were both born during this time when the faith was not allowed to be taught in the schools. So their parents really had to take control of educating them. And for Maximilian Kolbe, that meant sending him and his brother to a Franciscan seminary.
Okay.
And it was a very patriotic family. And in fact, their father had gone off and joined the resistance army, the home army, and eventually was killed. But they were very, very patriotic, and again had that love of country and of faith that was very much united.
Yeah.
So Maximilian becomes a priest, and we're just talking about Freemasons. He goes to the Vatican, right?
Here it is again. Yeah.
And he sees a demonstration with the Freemasons, and they're passing out literature. And, death to Catholicism, just really offensive stuff right there at the Vatican. But that's the moment, watching the Freemasons there at this holy place, when Maximilian Kolbe has this idea that he needs to form a group that is dedicated to loving Our Lady and asking for her intercession in a very special way.
All right. I mean, I think this happens where people look around and say, why is the enemy better marketers than we are? And that's what he's doing. He's looking around and saying, wait a minute, they're passing out pamphlets everywhere. Like they're marketing their ideas. Why can't we do that?
So
we so often think, well, we got the truth and that's good enough. We don't use the whole deck of cards,
So what does he do?
Yeah.
Is he and his brother both become Franciscan friars, And he decides to start a newspaper. And you know what you need to start a media company?
A printing press? I don't know.
And money.
Money. Oh,
you
yeah.
need money.
You need money. Yeah.
And people thought he was crazy. And he just knew that if this was God's will, that it was going to happen.
Well, I said printing press because I thought he bought a printing press.
Yes,
too.
he did.
He was amazing. Radio channel, everything. Sorry, keep going. But yeah, he needed the money.
He needed the money to get the printing press.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Lots of different stories and things came through in very miraculous ways.
Money shows up. Yeah.
Right, miraculous money shows up, basically. Yeah. So they have this printing press, and they start publishing Knights of the Immaculata, which it becomes very popular. I think circulation reached 1 million at one point.
That's pretty good.
And good Catholics like Jerzy grandmother were receiving Knights of the Immaculata and passing on the faith that way. Well, in September 1st, 1939, Poland is attacked by the West from Germany. And 19 days later, they are attacked from the East by the Soviet Union. Here we can tell the story in lots of different ways. One is that St. Maximilian Kolbe is arrested by the Gestapo. In fact, all of the friars in his community, except for 2, were arrested for the first time just a few days after Germany invaded. So as you're saying, the first thing that happens in a totalitarian state is you go after the Catholic leaders, you go after the priests. And the reason Catholicism is so threatening to any kind of totalitarian regime is there's a competition for loyalty.
Yeah.
If you are a faithful Catholic, your loyalty is to God first. And your loyalty is also to your family because you have duties. Because you have duties to God, you have duties to your family. The goal of a totalitarian regime is they want you to be loyal to the state. Yeah. So it's not surprising that he and almost the entire community were arrested. So they were arrested the very first time and then released. And then they're arrested again, and this begins his journey to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Before I get into that, I want to mention how successful his media enterprise was, because he not only had a printing press and a newspaper in Poland, but he also had a newspaper because he ended up moving to Japan along the way.
It's crazy.
So he also published in Japan. And then he also had a radio show.
Yeah.
So he was this media mogul.
Yeah, he was. It's amazing. I think in Japan he started a fire department. Like they needed one. So he's like, okay, let's start a fire department. I mean, it's like he could do anything. He was amazing.
Oh, and I should have mentioned, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So when he was a student in school, his math teacher was just amazed by his brilliance. And in fact, one of his professors said, it's such a shame he's just going to be a priest.
Yeah.
But my goodness, look what he accomplished.
Yeah, it's amazing.
For God. So he's arrested again. And on his way there, he's stopped and interrogated. And there's this one moment that is so consequential because I have to think that Jerzy along the way was thinking about this moment when something similar happened to him. But there's this one moment when he's stopped on his way to Auschwitz, and one of the Nazi officers sees his rosary and says, what's this? You believe in this? And Maximilian Kolbe affirms that, yes, he does. And, he's beaten, he's hit, but he just very calmly keeps saying back that, yes, he does believe in this. And then he ends up going to Auschwitz, and this is a story that we're all very familiar with. But one of his fellow prisoners at Auschwitz is identified to be taken to the starvation cell. Maximilian Kolbe steps forward, volunteers to take his place. And he appeals to them saying, look, I'm weaker. Basically, I'm no help at camp to you. Let me go in his place. And they say, okay, fine. But they're amazed at the 2 weeks that he spends there in the starvation cell with no food and water. He's singing hymns. He's hearing their confessions. He's praying. And he used this opportunity to minister to these prisoners, these very faithful Catholics, who were in despair.
Yeah.
And he prays for them, and he keeps a joy about him. And at the end of the 2 weeks, they come in. I think that there are maybe 3 of them who are still alive. He's the only one who is still conscious. The other 2 who are still alive were unconscious. And then, they just shoot all 3 of them up with some kind of a deadly concoction.
Yeah. And that guy who he saved
Yes.
goes to his canonization years later. That's what I heard. And he got home, he survived. And as an old man, I think he went to Maximilian's canonization, which is incredible.
And spoke about him.
Did I remember? Is that right? Did I remember that right? Yeah.
That detail I don't remember right now, but I do know that he traveled and spoke about him.
Yeah.
And because he wanted everybody to know this amazing story.
Yeah, so I think this is a brand new movie, Triumph of the Heart, The Passion of St. Maximilian Kolbe. I got to watch it. Haven't watched it. It just came out in September, right? So it's brand new. But if you want to know, I know the guy who made it. It's made by devout Catholics. So if somebody wants to know more about Kolbe, I bet you this is a fantastic example. By the way, Kevin, does that Nazi soldier not look like Spencer Brown? One of our employees. It's like he's got a doppelganger at tan. Anyway, sorry. All right. So you're telling the story of Kolbe because he was a massive influence on Blessed Jerzy.
Mm-hmm.
Go from there.
So I mentioned the story about the Nazis taking hold of Maximilian's rosary and intimidating him. Mm-hmm. So Jerzy becomes a priest and has to serve his mandatory 2 years of military duty. And not surprisingly, the priests and the seminary students got very special treatment. And so they were given very unholy temptations, and they were set aside from the rest of the community so that they could be treated very badly, because the goal, basically, was to get them to drop all of this God nonsense and just to join the state. Well, praying was not allowed. And
try stopping that.
Right.
It's like.
But there are different ways to pray.
Right.
You can pray in your head.
Yeah.
I could be sitting here praying.
That's what I'm saying.
And nobody around me could be the wiser. That's not the way that Jerzy prayed. Okay. He prayed openly. He prayed the rosary openly. He prayed out loud. He got beatings for it. He was, I think, taken outside and made to stand outside in the cold, wet. I can't remember all the different ways that they made things very unpleasant for him. And he actually spent the last year of his service in and out of the hospital because he was so often sick, because he had subjected himself to the worst treatment. He also had solitary confinement for a month.
Gosh.
But at one point, they saw his miraculous medal that he was wearing and treated him, just harassed him over it, and asked, who is this? Who is this on this medal? And I love this so much because he could have just, he could have not answered them. He could have just said, fine, it's Mary. But he didn't just say it was Mary. He said it was Mary, Queen of Poland.
In your face. Wow.
And you'll see this very strong rebellious nature of his come out in wonderful, wonderful, reassuring ways. In fact, some of the fellow priests who were serving their military time with him were just amazed by his boldness. And they remembered, many years later, they were interviewed after his awful murder. But that made a difference to them.
Yeah.
You never know who it is around you who are going to need to see that witness.
Yeah.
So from there, he becomes a priest, and he starts. He finds himself very called to continue a tradition in Poland, which is called the Masses of the Fatherland. And again, this was a way of showing the traditions of Poland and how the founding and the history of Poland was so just rooted in Catholicism. So he would say these masses, and thousands of people would come. They'd be spilling out, into the streets all over just to hear. And some non-Catholics in Poland would come too. And people were interviewed and asked, why are all these people here? Why is everybody here to hear this priest saying mass? And they would say that Father Jerzy's preaching helped them understand the difference between good and evil. He had a clarity about the importance of truth and always seeking truth and always telling the truth. And that is something that he learned from Maximilian Kolbe and also from Stefan Wyszynski. And also another one of his heroes who was just up there, Pope John Paul II.
Yeah.
And when Pope John Paul II came to Poland, that, amazing, I think it was a 9-day span, and encouraged the Polish people to, rise up and realize that they are children of God. We have all those beautiful video of the Polish people saying, chanting, "We want God," and he.
Yeah, I've seen those videos. It's incredible.
I mean, Poland was never the same after that happened, and Jerzy loved Pope John Paul II, and he was in the front row in one of those audiences.
That's awesome.
But he was.
I wonder if they ever met.
No, I don't believe that they did, but he was a major, major influence, just as Cardinal Wyszynski was.
So I'm going to get my timing right? So John Paul II was made Pope, 80 or 81, maybe even 79. I think it was like end of 79, right? After his predecessor was there for 30 days, Masons again. But so John Paul II, 79, same year I'm born, great year. It was 78, was it 78? Gosh, I'm terrible. Yeah, I'm just showing my ignorance on days. But I knew that Berlin Wall was 89. I don't know why I said 80. But so he's made Pope. He goes back to Poland, I think, like within the year of being made Pope, right? So it would have been like 80 or 81 or something when Jerzy is in the crowd watching the new Polish Pope show up, right? So and Jerzy would have been like 30 something, like he was, young 30s at this time. Is that about right?
That's about right.
Okay. Okay. So early 80s, Karol Wojtyła was in office. Jerzy's a young priest, and he kind of becomes like now we get into the Solidarity movement and his role in that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he was a chaplain of the Solidarity movement. And do
you want to tell what Solidarity movement is for people? I mean, I think they hear it, but they don't really understand what happened there.
So Lech Walesa was the head of the Solidarity. It's called a union, but it was so much more than a union.
It looked like a union, but it was more. Yeah.
It was the workers in Poland who were just fighting for freedom.
Yeah.
And they wanted their dignity to be recognized. They wanted to be paid for work better. And they wanted to be able to practice their faith.
So it was like a resistance against the Soviet Union.
That's exactly what it was.
Right.
Yes.
And you heard the stories about how John Paul II was supporting it.
Yes.
Like cloak and dagger, like he was like supporting it behind the scenes, sending them money, sending them fax machines, like helping their grassroots network. Like Vatican was supporting that. It's kind of a cool thing.
Very cool. Yeah. And there was this period of time, I can't remember how long it was, but something like 500 days when the communist government said, oh, okay, fine, we can live side by side with solidarity. And then they said, enough. Yeah. And they cracked down and imprisoned all of the leaders. And so this is probably my favorite Jerzy story. He was the only priest that attended the sham trials of the solidarity leaders.
I don't know about that, the sham trials.
Just a way to convict them. So
but like I didn't know about these trials.
So there were these trials, and total sham. The purpose of them was to just throw charges at them, convict them, and then put them in prison. So
sorry, what was the guy's name you mentioned? The guy who founded it. He's still Lech Walesa. He's still alive. In fact, I thought a long time about trying to get him to come to Belmont Abbey. He doesn't speak English, but he's still going.
Wow.
So was he in these trials?
It must have been, I guess.
Must have been, right. So they had trials. Were people put to death? Were they go to prison?
No, just prison. Okay. But the families would go. And so Jerzy would go, and he would be with the families.
Oh, okay.
And this is the best part. So when the judge would read out the sentence and the verdict, Jerzy would turn his back to the judge and face the family members and recite the Polish national anthem.
Wow. That takes some guts.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's very cool. That's gutsy.
He was, he knew that the families needed support, and he never abandoned them. He was a very hard worker. He spent a lot of time with these families. He had his masses for the fatherland. If anybody wanted him to come and speak, he said no. He never said no. And so towards the end of his life, the communists were just getting really fed up with him. And so I think they brought him in to be interrogated something like 13 times. They threw a bomb in his window. They planted evidence in his apartment. Bombs and
like evidence of that he was making bombs or that he had assassinations.
That he was violent.
Yeah, right.
And then they called him a hater. That's a word that we think that's all very modern.
Right.
We call them haters, but actually same tactics are always used as you mentioned. They called him a political fanatic. All the same stuff. That we have to deal with as faithful Catholics and conservatives. Yeah. So a political fanatic, a hater, and then they would try to slander him in the newspapers. And you have to think that he would hope that people weren't believing the things that were written about him, but he just kept on. Now his friends encouraged him to leave.
Leave Poland?
Yes.
Okay.
You're not safe here. Your life is in danger. He knew his life was in danger. Maximilian Kolbe knew his life was in danger. But he just kept on. So he kept saying the masses, and then he had to travel a little bit of a distance one night for a mass, and he was already ill. He wasn't feeling well. And on his way back, he was stopped by two communist security officers, and they beat him terribly and threw him in the river. And his body was recovered, days later, and he was almost not even recognizable because he was beaten so badly. But the people of Poland absolutely loved him. And a part of the story that I left out that's really important, not only the people of Poland loved him, freedom lovers all within and throughout the Eastern Bloc loved him and beyond. And the reason they knew about him is his supporters would go to his masses for the fatherland with a tape recorder, and they would record his homilies, and they would play them on Radio Free Europe just like Maximilian Kolbe.
Yeah. Wow.
And they would write articles in the underground newspapers throughout the Eastern Bloc. Wow. So he was this really important resistance figure.
Wow. It's really good. I mean, I love these characters that kind of, that, us traditional Catholics don't sit around and talk about all the time. And if I've heard this guy's name, which is a hard one for me to pronounce, I have never paid attention to him. Mm-hmm. And I love this. So John Paul II must have been very proud of this man. And it's, what's where my mind was going, Kimberly, is I could so easily have seen like John Paul II having been this guy as opposed to becoming Pope. Like he was cut from this cloth. Like he could have stayed in Poland as a simple priest and led the resistance and been the chaplain for the Solidarity movement, and his homilies could have been recorded and he could have been martyred, and he would have been no problem being a martyr. And instead he ends up in, so I don't know why I'm talking about Kerwatiwa, but I just see it as just an incredible expression of divine providence that he uses these people in these different ways, and they all get so many of them came out of Poland. It's incredible. So, all right. So, okay, he's been beatified. Who beatified him? Was it Benedict or John Paul II? Do you know who made him a blessed?
I don't remember.
Yeah, that's right. I can look it up, but I hope he makes his way all the way to sainthood. That'd be really cool. And I think the question is why? Why do you see this guy, as you saw Joan of Arc and Saint Jose Luis Sanchez, as example, model or mentors for young people and for parents to pay attention to and say, hey, kids, be like that guy?
Because Pope John Paul II coming to Poland was not enough. He needed people in the country, faithful Catholics, to, yes, be inspired by his message, but themselves to speak truth, and then to turn around to their neighbors and inspire them to embrace the dignity that they have as children of God and as human beings made in the image and likeness of God, which they had been denied on a daily basis by the communist government. Because it's not enough for one person, because we all have to stand up for truth. We are all called to do that. We are not all called to be martyrs, but we are all called to stand up for the faith.
Do you think this could happen in the States? I mean, fast forward, I don't know how many years, but throughout history, Catholicism has been brutally oppressed. And we've had oppression in this country in a soft way. We like to complain about it and everything, but I don't know any Catholics in the States who have been martyred. Do you? But do you think that day could come? That's a crazy question, I know.
It's a little bit of a crazy question.
But I think, don't we have a sense of just we're beyond that? We would never repeat this. We would never do this again. Like our government would never do what the Soviet Union did. Our government would never do what we did in the French Revolution, cutting poor Clare's nuns, their heads off. We would never do what happened in the Cristeros. I can't say the word. Cristeros wars. We would never do that, but wouldn't we?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I do know that there is never going to be a time when we are not tested in lots of different ways. I don't know what the ways that we're going to be tested are going to be, what exactly that's going to look like. Really, who could have predicted the insanity that this country and the world has gone through, the transgender movement over the last few years? Could you have predicted that?
No.
So use your imagination and think, where we're going to be a decade from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Yeah. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that we're going to continue to be tested, and we continue to have to stand up for truth in all of its forms.
All right. I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but you do have a fourth Satanist, Teresa of Calcutta. And obviously I like Mother Teresa. I met her. I spent the day with Mother Teresa. It was kind of amazing. You know, I was 16 when she came to Charlotte. I picked her up from the airport with the bishop and had a nice day with her. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a cool story. But so I love her. But it was hard for me to see how she fits in this, because you have 3 young saints who stood up to the government or powers that be and were martyrs. Mm-hmm. And then you got the old wrinkly woman who just took care of the poor. Mm-hmm. No offense, Mother. Connect the dots for me.
I believe that I told her story of courage in a way that she wanted it to be told. Because the courage that this 5 foot...
Nothing. Yeah.
5 foot woman, like you said, this do-gooder, right? This humanitarian, to stand up in front of the world in 1979 and accept the Nobel Peace Prize, and to use this opportunity in front of an international audience to call out not just the evil of abortion, but to call out the evil of the nations that support abortion. And then to do the same thing in, I can't remember, 1993, something like that.
Yeah, it was when I was 16. It was at the Charlotte Coliseum.
Oh, really?
And it was Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, I think, were there. And she said, she called them out right in front of them.
Right in front of them.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton,
that was
Hillary
the day.
Clinton.
I was with her that morning. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I told her everything to say. I was like, here's what you got to do, Mom. Just kidding. No. I really was with her that morning. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Al Gore, Tipper Gore.
Yeah.
And she gave a speech that was remarkably similar to the one that she gave when she accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. That took guts. She didn't have to say anything. Nobody asked her about abortion. Bill Clinton didn't ask her about abortion. She was accepting the Nobel Peace Prize. Nobody said, all right, Mother, well, hey, but those unborn babies, they're not really that important, are they? Nobody pressed her. On her own, she decided, this is the moment. I'm going to use my celebrity as a do-gooder, as the most popular humanitarian in the world. I'm going to use this platform to stand up for life, to stand up for truth, and to say the truth that needs to be told that is very unpopular. It's considered very unsophisticated in our modern times, and I'm going to be the one to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Kevin, look up real quick, like what year she came to Charlotte, because I know I was 16. I graduated high school in 98, so I was 18. So that tells me like 95, 96. And that, so was that the same time that she stood up to Bill Clinton?
June 13th, 1995.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess that's the time when Bill Clinton was there, and she told them all. I mean, this was national news.
Oh, yes.
This was a big deal. I mean, maybe she did it before, like earlier.
It was National Prayer Breakfast.
It was National Prayer Breakfast, February 4th, 1994.
That's when she told off Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
Okay. Sort of told him off. So that part wasn't in Charlotte, but she did come to Charlotte in 95. So,
Neat.
So she didn't like lead a resistance against government, but or did she?
Well, this is more like what we face.
Okay, that's your connection.
So,
yeah.
How many times do we stay silent?
Right. Yeah, and how many church leaders? How many bishops won't do what she did, right? They won't do it. If they're standing in front of Bill Clinton or whoever.
That's
the point.
This little woman had the
yeah.
courage to do.
I love it. All right, I'm sold. She belongs in the book. That just clicked for me. I got it now. Because the big military guys couldn't do what little Joan of Arc could do. Big military guys maybe weren't willing to suffer a martyr's death like the little 14-year-old boy. Mm-hmm. You know, the big politicians probably who were trying to, make peace with the Soviet Union, they didn't have the guts to stand up to them like Blessed Jerzy. And all of our bishops, not all, many of our bishops, many of our politicians, all of these supposed Catholics who go to communion every Sunday would sit right in front of these horrific politicians that allow abortion to go rampant. And the little lady from Turkey who ends up living in India has the guts to stand up to them. Mm-hmm. She's a Joan of Arc figure. Mm-hmm. I get it. Sold. Well done.
Excellent.
It took me a while, but I get it. And you're saying we have to kind of do almost like our situation is much more like her situation than many of the other characters we've talked about, because we can't just remain silent in the face of these things. She's a witness. We have to be the same way.
And the reason we need these different stories is because we don't know the ways we're going to be tested.
Yeah. That's right.
We don't know what the future holds. But there are lessons that we can draw from every single one of them, from Joan of Arc, from Saint Jose, from Blessed Jerzy, from Mother Teresa.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's different ways to be courageous. And our kids need these people as examples so that they can face whatever challenges God sends them. Outstanding. Any final words? This has been awesome.
Thank you for publishing my book.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a fantastic book.
Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
The year that I spent writing this book was my favorite, best year of my life.
Oh.
I loved it. I loved thinking about the saints every day. It took me a whole year to write the book. I loved thinking about the saints every day. I loved praying to them. And I still think about them a lot.
Yeah.
And I still pray to them a lot.
Outstanding. Well, they'll be there for you when you need them, and your kids. You're doing a great job, Mom. Way to go.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
You too.
Oh, well, trying. All right, guys. This was awesome. Thank you for being here.
Excellent. Thank you for having me on.
God bless you, Kimberly.
God bless you.
We're done. Hey, thanks, guys, for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.